Welcome to this special installment of the Data Point, the GSMA Intelligence video series where we look at one specific piece of data, one number, and explore its significance in the market. So today's number is 3. That's the number. That's the number of industry events that Tim and I will be going to over the next few weeks. Now we're going into the summer holidays, which means these are some of the final events and the big final industry get-togethers before you go into the summer holidays. But they're also important on their own, not just sort of your last hurrah before you take off some time. So we want to give a bit of a preview and some perspective on why they're unique, why we're going there, but also maybe even why they're a little bit alike. So Tim, starting with you, where are you headed to next before you kick back for the holidays?
I am headed to Shanghai in China to enjoy the MWC Shanghai event, which I expect is going to be very detailed with a lot of things happening. I think if we look at sort of China as a market full stop, it's really interesting because it is the global number one in so many of the tech categories. And now that it's past a billion 5G subscribers, it's investing heavily in AI and really wants to be a superpower in a lot of these technologies. There's always an interesting thing to learn. So, what am I looking out for? Well, I think, you mentioned AI, that's going to be big. How that is playing out among implementation in businesses, but also how telco operators and their partners are really redefining business models to compete in the AI age. This whole notion of networks for AI is going to be big. I think there's going to be a huge focus on monetization and continuing to monetize 5G networks, and proof points that we're probably going to see in terms, especially in the business side, with companies in digital transformation and using advanced 5G combining with AI. I think we're going to hear about satellite and NTN. And I think we're going to hear about sort of China's place in the world and the intersection between tech and geopolitics. So we're excited, and we've got a bunch of cool things happening there. We're going to be releasing and presenting on the next part of our 5G index. We are running a satellite summit, and we're going to be chairing a number of sessions around this concept of monetization. So I think there's hopefully a good alignment with a lot of the themes happening. But let's flip it to you, Peter. You're going to be in a different part of the world. Tell us about where you're going.
Yeah, so I'll be staying closer to home in Europe. So while you're at MWC Shanghai, and for everyone paying attention, it is MWC, not Mobile World Congress. If you're talking to someone, they talk about Mobile World Congress Shanghai, give them a funny look. It is MWC. So while Tim is at MWC Shanghai, I'll be at the DTW Ignite event. That's the TM Forums event in Copenhagen. And the week before at GTC Europe, which is NVIDIA's big event. It's the European version of their big global event. And yeah, excited for both of them. Obviously, GTC is going to be all AI. I'm sure there'll be some GPU and some crypto stuff and some other things because NVIDIA is doing a lot of things, but obviously AI will dominate the discussion. And then DTW, given the TM forum focus, obviously a big AI component there, but also looking at automation, obviously how we roll out new services and APIs. We'll be leveraging the opportunity at DTW to do a few things, right, on a panel around the API economy. That's going to be fun. A lot of big names. Honored to be up there with some great operators. We're going to have Telefonica. We're going to have DT. We're going to have the Aduna folks. Some other GSMA colleagues, which is going to be great. Going to also be at the Green Development Forum. So we've done a lot of work around sustainability. I think a big thing that I'm really proud of is around MWC timeframe, we launched a Green Network Index, which looks not just at energy efficiency, but also how we look at enablement, what the enablement factor of digitization, but also how you balance energy efficiency with actual performance of networks. So we'll be talking a bit about that and hopefully find some new folks to come in. And then an invite-only session, which is kind of exciting for a C-suite side of things, also looking at APIs. So, obviously AI, it's all events, but then also a bit more of sort of where's that line between AI and automation I'm going to be interested in, because I think a lot of curmudgeons kind of talk sometimes about, oh, it's not AI, it's just automation. But I think a lot of what we've been doing and a lot of value is just being drawn from automation. And the TM Forum's done so much work on that around autonomous networks. And so it's always great to see sort of where operators are with that. And one thing DTW always does really well, particularly with the TM Forum Catalyst events, is sort of showing what operators are doing, projects with their suppliers. So it's always great to sort of actually see where the rubber hits the road and some of those implementations.
Yeah, super interesting. So much going on there. And we both talked about AI and it brings to mind this notion of, common themes that kind of stitch between all these events. For you, when you look at AI, how do you unpack that to get to a level where there is commonality between how it's being talked about in China, say, versus in Europe or even the US? How would you go about that?
Yeah, and it's a good question because there's so many facets to it, right? There's so many facets to the way it's being used. And I think you called out sort of this networks for AI side of things versus AI for networks. And I think when I look at the commonality, because clearly where something like DTW has been focused has been sort of on that AI for networks. How do we look at AI to drive new services, to drive the networks? If you look at something like GTC and what NVIDIA is doing, yes, NVIDIA is talking about how you can leverage AI to run networks, but also networks for AI. Big part of how do we actually embed AI into the networks to make sure that those networks can support AI. So you definitely see those different angles. But I think across both of those, and probably what you'll be seeing in Shanghai as well, it is just this basic recognition that we're still figuring this stuff out. No one has the story figured out, right? It is the right thing to double down on savings, AI for networks, and basically monetize via that because that's critical, right? Is it networks of AI because there's a revenue opportunity there? Is it some basic things like rolling out sovereign AI? We've seen a lot of that. I think the one thing that we will see, though, in common across all of them, whether it's networks for AI, AI for networks, whatever you want to think about it, will be a focus on distribution and distributed inferencing. I say that in part because we've been doing a lot of work on that. So it's a big focus for us. You'll know that Tim, I think hopefully some folks out there who've seen our work on that will know that. But just coming off of, and hopefully you've all seen some of the blog posts I put out from Dell Technologies World last month. We are beginning to see the people deploy this. We're beginning to see a recognition that edge AI is not some fancy futuristic thing, but it's just a way we're going to have to deploy some AI use cases. And I think that's one thing we're going to see in common across all of them. So I've stolen your thunder now in trying to talk about commonalities across the shows. AI is it's the easy answer for commonalities across any shows. What do you think will be another commonality across the three events?
So I'm going to come back to the monetization angle. And
Yeah.
and I think there's a few reasons for that. I think one, wherever you're looking in the world, there is a need for growth. And in the telecoms industry, you will know, and a lot of our viewers will know that that's been a challenge for some time. It does vary depending on the region you look at and the time, but broadly, post saturation in the sort of mid 2010s, there's been this issue of how do we find a new growth trajectory? And so as we're kind of cruising through the mid cycle of 5G and even looking towards the end of the decade when eventually 6G will come along, there's a lot of pressure to get growth and look at that. So I think that's part of it. The other angle I think that is really key with monetization is this idea of diversifying your business model in the AI era. So it links to what you're talking about. We're seeing a lot of experimentation in Asia and China, specifically around like leveraging GPU as a service. other network models that pair AI with mobile network capabilities to do new things that really haven't been done before from a telco perspective. And I think that's super interesting because it goes to relevance, it goes to financial health, and it goes to longevity. And with the world changing so much technologically, that being able to monetize on those new capabilities is really, really important. So it's not just a case of paying back your capex and making a return for investors. It's actually long-term health and sustainability. So I
Yeah,
think those are things we're going to be watching.
and I know we talked a lot of this from an AI perspective, but the other thing that I mentioned that we're going to see a lot at the TM Forum event, DTW Ignite, but also in China, APIs, right? APIs, I know it's going to be a big focus on APIs at MWC Shanghai, big focus in Copenhagen. That's all about monetization, right? That is all about how do we monetize network capabilities, right? Big, big focus early on in terms of identity, in terms of anti-fraud, super successful. We're seeing some great use cases in terms of quality on demand. That's the next big thing that we're seeing. But again, to your point, the fundamental point of whether it's AI or APIs, it's how do we monetize those network capabilities? Because with 6G coming on the horizon, we got to start thinking about that. So, yeah, I think it will be an exciting few weeks for both of us.
No question about it. No question about it.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. You can look for our insights from the events during the show. We'll be posting to socials as always. We'll be listing some of the reports on some of the sessions in the comments to this video so you can find us. And then tune in afterwards. We'll come back with some thoughts and a wrap up of what we saw from the show. So thank you all very much, and thanks for joining us.